now and whenever you're ready to go.
Perfect. Well, let's start with introducing our wines that we found, right? So, Alyssa, what did you find at the co-op?
So I found Pierre Spar. Sorry if I butchered his name. Gewürztraminer.
Okay.
Like, I know I'm butchering it. Did you get the same one?
Yeah.
I was wanted to like text you and be like, which one are you getting? So we could get different ones. But now I'm curious to see how my tasting notes are compared to yours. So I can like just keep giving myself a grade after.
Exactly.
What
That's
year
awesome.
was it? Was it 2017 as well?
It's 2018, mine is.
Oh, so mine is a 2017. So we got a little bit of a difference.
Okay,
Different
so
co-ops, different vintages.
And then Advinaja, what did you find?
So we're hoping for a match with John. We've matched with him before on this, so 2 for 2 would be tough. We went with the Trimoc Pinot Blanc. We've tried the 2016 before. This one is now, I think, a 2018. Yeah. So interested to try that, but we loved the 2016. So hope we have a similar experience.
I remember when you guys were trying that the first time. It was, if I remember correctly, it was kind of a reintroduction to Alsatian wines. You hadn't had them in a while.
Yeah.
How about you,
Okay.
Alyssa? Have you ever purchased an Alsatian bottle of wine before?
No, this was a first for me. It was nice. What I really like about this is it's getting me looking around at different bottles and in different sections. Like I really like Australian wines, and so I can't say I've ventured much into the French section ever, which is funny because all of these wines are obviously like amazing. And so yeah, no, it's a new one for me.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah, what are you drinking, John? You better.
So I'm going to start with this one. Sorry, guys, we're not matching this time. But the Charles Bar, and you can see it's Alsace Grand Cru Riesling, but with a little bit of age from 2014. And I got this at K&L which is a great wine store here in the Bay Area. This was $23 for a wine that's already showing some age. And I got a second bottle because why not? I got this. Does the name look familiar?
Yes,
Wow.
But it is Cremant Alsace Rosé, which means this is we'll keep that for a surprise.
Sparkling, right?
Yeah, it is sparkling, and as you can tell, it's not white; it's rosé. But yeah.
Oh, I wish I could try it. Okay.
I'm not going to save it for you. I'm sorry.
I know. Okay, let's get into this. Okay. So Alsace. I kind of put the phonetic spelling there too, just in case. I like to call it Alsace, like my husband does. But yeah, so I found this awesome picture of the Alsace region, which shows all the vineyards that are surrounding all the little towns. And it kind of moves from north to south alongside some mountain ranges here. But yeah, I just thought this picture was really pretty. One thing to kind of note is 90% of production here is white. Let me just swap over. Okay, so location. I'm just gonna move you guys out of my way. So Alsace is right on the border with Germany in the northeastern part of France. And then it's split into two separate areas. The northern part, or the green part, is the Basse Rhine, and then there's the Haute Rhine, that's the orange part on the bottom. I like this map because it shows a really good view of the mountain range that's at Vosges Mountains there, and it's really important to the area because a lot of the rainfall that happens falls on the western side of the area, so just like over here, which allows all this area to be really quite dry. And another kind of thing, oh, hold on here. Sorry, my laser pointer. Okay, what do we think that maybe the climate is going to be like here? Any Not you, John. But like out of the maritime, continental, Mediterranean, any kind of guesses?
Is it going to be a bit cooler?
Yes, definitely. What do you think? Is it going to be kind of wet, or I guess we already talked about it being dry, but what about like winters,
Let's
summers?
put it this way. Is it more like New York or more like Saskatchewan?
Yeah, I guess that's a good way.
New York.
Interesting. Okay.
I was going to say the opposite.
Yeah, so it's cool to moderate temperatures here, more colder winters, a little bit warmer summers. And then the Vosges Mountains, like we were talking about earlier, a little bit of a dry influence. And then there's also this Rhine River just to the east of the area, which was super important back in the day for shipping wines. And this river actually runs right into Germany. But yeah, it also provides a little bit of moderating influence too to some vineyards that might be around there, just kind of cooling them down.
So the correct answer is it was more like Saskatchewan
Yes, definitely.
than New York, more continental.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, less humidity from not being close to the large bodies of water.
Can I add one
Okay,
more thing?
yeah, go ahead.
It is the sunniest place in France.
Oh yes, good point.
The most sunny days in the year in all of France, and that's partially because of the Vosges mountain range that just protects it from all the crappy weather that the rest of France gets,
Mm-hmm.
except the south of France.
Right. Yeah, they get that nice Mediterranean weather. Okay, so history. Like all places in France, the Romans were the ones that came through, brought their vines, planted them across Europe. Um, then the industry was furthered by the Benedictine and Cistercian monks who started actually studying soils and vineyard sites and specific clos, which are kind of walled in areas. They were the first kind of people to really create a vineyard plot. But the most kind of interesting part about this area, there was a lot of political back and forth between Germany. Germany kind of took over the area in 1870. And this was kind of around the time of phylloxera. So a lot of growers abandoned their hillside sites for the valley floors, which were much easier and more fertile to grow vines because they were mostly just supplying some bulk wine production in Germany. After World War I, though, it got kind of handed back to France, and they had a regulatory body that started to ban those hybrid varieties because they wanted to put more focus on some noble varieties, which we'll get to in a couple slides. And then it was retaken again by Germany in World War II. So again, production declined. Hitler wasn't much of a drinker, so I don't think he put much effort into keeping that going. But then it was returned to France again after war's end, and that's when they really started to kind of focus on quality again, as well as particular styles and grapes. So, and because of that, which you might have noticed on your labels, it's less of a French name and more of German names. And even the bottle, this really tall flute-sized bottle, this is a very German-style bottle. So they did adopt and keep some things from German influence. And actually, they have their own language that's kind of a mixture between German and French, which is pretty interesting. And even the buildings, I thought I'd just give us a picture here of the city of Strasbourg that's in the Basse Rhine in the north. And I mean, it looks more like a German architecture than French architecture to me. But really
Ajda, have you been there?
Yes, I have been to Strasbourg.
Oh, nice.
Yes, we actually went over a Thanksgiving weekend when I was young and living in Paris. And it was like a Christmas village out of a movie. It was gorgeous. It's a very quaint town. It's small, but there's also Colmar, which is, I think, further south of Strasbourg. Very similar in architecture and culture as well. It's delightful.
So Colmar is kind of that split between the Boss Rhine and the Holt Rhine.
Yeah.
And it's actually a very important center for Alsatian wine. A lot of the negotiants are actually in that area.
Oh, I didn't know
I
that.
will say it's very cold in the winter. It's like freezing, and they make the best hot chocolate too.
Really good food there, right?
Yeah. Yes, and I wasn't vegan at the time, so
Nice.
That helps.
that helped.
Do we want to look at our appearance maybe of our wine so far? Let's get into it. Okay, maybe I will pick on John first. Just 'cause-
Okay, which wine do you want me to do?
Well, do both.
Okay, so I'll start with the Riesling.
Okay.
Appearance. I gotta get my white paper and try and get a little more light. This is pale intensity, so there is a little bit of a thin meniscus that is clear around the edge. But I am going to call this more gold than lemon. There's a little bit of richness that is a little more intense. Not quite that orange character, but it is deeper in color, even though it's still pale.
Right.
Okay, that's wine one.
So what was your final
Wine.
answer? Was it a medium gold?
I'm going to go pale gold.
Pale gold. Okay.
Pale gold. And then we have this wine right here. It is sparkling rosé.
Mm-hmm.
Brut. This one's interesting. It's pale, but I'm going to call it pink orange because there is a kind of that salmon color, but there is an orange tinge to it.
Wow.
Okay.
Nice. Alyssa, do you want to go next?
Sorry, who's next?
Alyssa, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'll go next.
Okay.
My answers are very similar. I also have quite a, kind of pale, watery rim. So I would say that it's pale intensity. And also gold in color. I've got my white sheet beneath here. I even went on to the WSET like comparisons of all the colors. So I'll hold it up a bit, maybe you can see it. But yeah, I'd say it's not quite lemon. It's a bit richer also in pigment. So I'm gonna go with gold.
Nice. The Menage done?
All right. Do you want me to go?
Yeah, go.
Okay. So it's definitely a pale lemon. And
We didn't do nose. Are we doing nose or not yet?
Good. While we're here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, why not?
okay. Medium intensity.
Okay.
And in terms of aromas, definitely like a ripe apple, like a yellow to red apple on the sweeter side. Pineapple. Oh, you smell pear. Pear,
Yeah, I
lime.
got some pear, yeah.
There's some minerality in there. You can kind of sense it.
Nice. Like something more like flinty or something kind of wet rock.
What do you think? Flinty or wet?
Maybe flinty.
Flinty. Yeah, not wet rock.
Okay. Anything floral or green?
Floral. I forgot what a honeysuckle tasted like. I might have. It's not sweet. It's not sweet enough for that.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay.
So then, if it's floral, not quite honeysuckle, the catch-all is white blossom.
I need to smell white blossom.
No.
We're notoriously bad for calling floral notes.
You just need to go to a florist and just say, "I'm browsing."
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Valentine's Day, right? You can buy
That's
flowers.
right. Need some flowers tomorrow.
You don't have them already, Adam?
Uh-oh. I gotta go.
Thanks.
We do have delicious chocolates after this.
Okay. Just don't pair them with red wine because I'll be disappointed.
Yeah, that's true. We learned that from you.
John, do you want to do your nose?
Sure. So on the Riesling, medium plus intensity. This is as an aged Riesling with a little bit of age. There is that signature petroleum on the nose.
Mm-hmm.
Below that is kind of a bruised red apple. There is a little bit of citrus, kind of more like lemon, lime, a little bit of grapefruit.
Okay.
There is whetstone and some flintiness. There's a little bit of cream, which is a little surprising,
Mm-hmm.
and like dried apricot.
Okay, nice.
Okay, let Alyssa go next, and then I'll get on to rosé.
Okay. So I'm getting like immediately a lot of the white blossom as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like a nice big punch to the face with that. Also, like it's just like overwhelming. Like, there's so much happening with this wine. It feels more complex than what I've been drinking. So also I've been smelling a lot of jams lately because I hear the word jammy a lot. And so I'm getting like a jammy apricot with this one. And it's very sweet. It's almost like a candy, like cupcake icing, red licorice, pink grapefruit.
It's a lot of great descriptors there.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a fresh cut pink grapefruit.
Nice. Yeah. What would you say the intensity is?
Oh, intensity, I think medium minus.
Medium minus? Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe medium plus. I change it to medium plus.
Yeah, because you said it was punching out at you, right? So
that is. I was thinking, I'm like, it's not medium minus. It's punching out quite a bit. Yeah.
Awesome. Is that kind of all you think roughly? Lots of flowers, lots of citrus, a little licorice.
I'm trying to smell for like more spice and like now too. That's what I'm working on, and the whetstone. Although I don't know. Like I'm still calibrating that with my nose and palate. So sorry, that's my husband trying to cook dinner.
Hey, if he's cooking, it's all good.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm drinking. He's cooking. It's perfect. So.
Yeah. So
yeah, I'm smelling for like spice, but I don't know if I'm finding anything quite yet.
I'm gonna throw out a spice, see if you get it.
Okay.
Or ginger.
Maybe like a bit of zinginess, similar to ginger. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe tiny.
I know what Kandra's looking for, but we'll save that.
Yeah. Okay, John, go with your rosé crémant.
So aroma is medium on this one. There is some rose petals on the nose. Ripe cherries, strawberries. So think strawberry brioche. Kind of that a little bit of sweet strawberry with the bready note.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Ajda, it is that good. And there's there's a little bit of toastiness, not a lot, and some cranberry. So there's a bit of a sour fruit note to it.
Yeah, lots of red fruit.
Yeah, mostly red fruit. Kind of concentrated in a few areas.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I did my tasting note ahead of time because I was trying to time myself under exam conditions. So I have it kind of ready to go. Mine is, I actually went medium intensity for color, and I did say gold as well, mostly just because the color went right out to the rim almost on my glass. And then I had a medium plus aroma intensity, so very similar to you, Alyssa. And I had rose petals white flowers and blossom. Lots of citrus too. I got that pink grapefruit that you did, as well as some lemon and maybe some orange zest. And then I had a little gooseberry, ripe apricot, bright lychee. Have you ever had like a lychee martini? Like,
Yeah, yeah, I've had lychee before. I can totally smell that too.
Yeah.
Now that you
Yeah.
say that, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what that is.
Lots
Is that
of
what you're
Yeah.
looking for? Yeah. I was like, there's this tanginess, and I don't know what it is. I almost wanted to say like mangosteen. If you've ever had a mangosteen,
Yes,
Mhm.
I think that could have worked too.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
So I guess it'll be similar to a lychee.
Yeah. I also had a little like slight grassiness. And I said instead of ginger, a little bit of white pepper. And then I had a little bit of flintiness with some honey as well. So there was a lot going on in mine as well.
and lychee is signature for Gewürztraminer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
When I go into if I go into a blind tasting and I smell lychee, it's one of two things. It's either Gewürztraminer or it's a Torrontés from Argentina.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so soil. Very, very varied in this region, and mostly just from that Vosges Mountains. So as erosion keeps happening, the soils change quite a bit. So I actually found this picture, and sorry, it's a little blurry on the words, but it gives a good viewing of what these different soils look like and what they all might impart a little bit of different effects onto the grapes. Maybe adding that little bit of flintiness or wet rock aspect to it, or maybe more riper fruit, being a warmer soil. Um, Anything to add to this, John, about soil?
Um, you know, the limestone um,
Mhm.
is an acidic soil, so it's going to help grapes that are grown on that retain acidity.
Mhm.
Um, you know, this is one of those areas where pairing rootstock to the soil to the varietal becomes critical because you want to make sure that you don't the vines aren't over vigorous or that they don't die because of the soil conditions.
Yeah, like the high-based lime soils. So viticulture here is kind of varied as well, just depending on where the sites are. But first and foremost, because it's so dry, they're able to farm organically and biodynamically. And a lot of the times they're not really chasing that certification. So you might not see it on a lot of the bottles here, but they're likely to be farming in this method because it's very easy to do so for them. With the plains, they are actually training vines just a little higher, maybe in a little like arch. And this is just to minimize frost risk. Um, as heat rises, they can kind of benefit from that. And then mechanization is more common on these flat plains too. They can just drive a tractor quite easily through these areas. So it's often used for Cremant grapes, actually. But other grapes are grown down there as well. And then slopes are a little different. They're training their vines quite low, like this picture to the ground. And that's just mostly to benefit from the radiated heat. And then the rows are very, very important too on these slopes. And they really need to make sure that they're not shading other vines. So they might actually place them a little further apart than in other areas. And then just being on slopes, it's very difficult to mechanize. So they're often harvesting by hand. And then one other note here is that irrigation is not allowed here. So just being quite dry, it can be a concern in very hot years. So grapes, these noble varieties I was talking about earlier. There are four in Alsace. The first being Riesling, which is the most widely planted. And then this is, like John was saying, a lot of stony, steely character, stone fruit citrus. I also included pictures of the grapes just so we can kind of have a look at them too. Riesling grapes have those little dots on them and maybe a little bit of pigment too. And then Gewürztraminer, which we are drinking as well. So known for its quite pungent aromatics, really kind of full-bodied, oily texture, which we'll see once we get tasting, I'm sure. And then the grapes here look like this. So they have a little bit more color, which actually adds to the gold color of our glass. Pinot Gris would be the next one. This one is kind of similar to Gewürztraminer in some way, but is going to have way more acidity and it's going to be maybe a little less aromatic. And grapes look like this, so they will also give a little bit of a golder color to the wine. Then we have Muscat, and there's two varietals of Muscat here. There's Muscat Blanc à Petit Grain and Muscat Hautenel. So the Petit Grain is known as the higher quality grape, producing the best wines. And then the Muscat Hautenel, this one crops more reliably. So Muscat grapes, because they are super aromatic, bugs, birds, they all love it. So once the skin is pierced, they can have, a lot of fungal diseases happen, things like that. So they are quite susceptible to the bugs and birds. And then Pinot Blanc. So this is not actually part of the noble varieties, but it is still widely grown. It's primarily used in the Crémant or the sparkling wine, but they're also doing dry wines, which Adam and Ajda are enjoying. But yeah, they're like a little bit more refreshing, maybe a little less on the aromatics than the other four. And then those grapes kind of look like that. And then lastly, there is a grape called Auxerrois, which is very similar to Pinot Blanc, and actually when you look up specifics about this grape, they just combine it with Pinot Blanc anyway, even though they're separate species. I'm not really sure how they get away with that anymore, but that's just...
They're just lazy.
Right? There's also a French grape called Sylvaner, and then the only red variety is Pinot Noir, which is in your rosé. So,
before you jump in, Ajda, have you ever heard of, there's a term in France for easy drinking wines. They call them the glug glug wines.
They call them what?
Glug glug.
Glug glug?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Have you heard that term before? Just curious.
No, actually, I haven't.
Okay. There's actually a video of a guy in Chablis talking about it, and that's where I first heard the term. So I was curious to see if our native French speaker had heard it before.
No,
And the reason why I thought about it,
I've never been offered glug glug wine.
the reason why I thought about it is because Pinot Blanc kind of fits into that light, refreshing, everyday kind of glug glug every day.
I like it.
Okay.
I have to use it next time we're there.
and see what you get.
Yeah, right?
glug, glug, glug.
S'il vous plaît.
So for appellations and classifications, actually this area is very easy to understand. And as we move through different areas of France, we're going to look back on how easy this is to understand Alsace and wish the other areas were so. But there's two things. So it's just Alsace AOC, which my wine is. I'm not sure about yours. Maybe have a look at the label. There's also Alsace Grand Cru. So, which I think your Riesling, right, John, is Alsace Grand Cru? Yes.
Grand Cru.
Grand Cru. So there's only 51 Grand Crus, which you have one of them, right? Do you have anything else to add?
The interesting thing is that it does not have a vineyard name on it that I can identify, which is interesting because this could be then a blend of a couple of Grand Cru vineyards,
right?
Which seems kind of silly, but.
Grand Cru, though, it has to be one of those 4 noble variety grapes in order to achieve the Grand Cru label. Whereas Alsace AOC, it's the vast majority of the production, right? And this is mostly going to be single variety as well, but it can be the Pinot Blanc or Auxerrois. There's also Vendage Tardif, which literally translates to late harvest, or VT wines they're called. Again, this can only be those 4 noble varieties. And what they do is passerage, where they let the grapes really sit on the vines and concentrate their sugars. And there's minimum sugar levels for each grape. I did write them down. Yeah, so Vendage Tardif for Muscat or Riesling, they have to have 235 grams per liter, where Pinot Gris or Gewürztraminer 257 grams per liter. So they need to kind of test the grapes first, make sure that they are hitting on that. So they can be shriveled on the vine, or they can also have botrytis. So either or. But yeah, they're not going to harvest until the grapes are quite shriveled. And they might have to do multiple passes through the vineyard to harvest little bits at a time, which all adds.
To give you an idea of that sweetness, a brut champagne, which sometimes has some distinctive sweetness, is only maximum 12 grams per liter.
Yeah.
So for these, for the VT wines, you're talking in the aspect of 100 times or 200 times as sweet.
No kidding. And then there is the Sélection de Grains Nobles, or SGN. And again, this is noble varieties only. The minimum sugar levels are much higher much higher. They're higher, though. 276 grams for Muscat or Riesling and 306 grams for Pinot Gris or Gewürztraminer. And botrytis and noble rot really has a big part of this and concentrating those sugars. But this wine isn't produced every year. So if we remember kind of when we talked about sweet wines a little bit, botrytis, it's this rot that comes in, but it's really about the timing when this happens. The grapes have to be fully ripe for this rot to be considered a good rot. And it has to still be kind of dry. So, and it affects the grapes really all over the place and varied. So again, multiple tries through the harvest to get a hold of these wines. So they are quite expensive too because of this. And then there's the Edelsviker or the Gentil, and this is basically inexpensive blended wine. So if you saw this on an Alsatian bottle, that would be an indication of being a blended wine. So Crémant, how are we doing? Should we do some tasting maybe before we talk bubbles? Yeah. Okay. John, why don't you start? You got 2, so why don't you start with 1 and then we'll swing back around.
Okay. We'll do the Riesling first.
Okay.
So it's a dry wine. I know this is not allowed, but I'm going to say it anyways. Super high acidity. Mm-hmm. Medium alcohol. I know you don't say this with white wines, but there's a little bit of phenolic ripeness that comes across as a little bit of tannin, a little bit of drying sensation. The flavor intensity is pronounced. On the palate, do you want me to keep going on with flavors?
Well. Yeah.
Okay. A lot more on the citrus on the palate. So that petroleum is kind of, there's just a bit of hint of it, but on the palate, it's lemon, lime, grapefruit. The apricot is a little more fresh. There's a hint of honey, a little bit of, there's a lime, that lime, it's almost like limestone character more than lime itself. More flinty than whetstone.
Okay.
The apple is more dried apple.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, some cinnamon, some ginger, kind of that sweet spice.
Okay.
and it's kind of intermingled with the honey. So there's a lot going on the palate, just like on the nose. A little more fresher than on the nose was coming in, a little more dried, and still a little bit of that white blossom as well.
Nice. So you got kind of really delicate aromas all the way through tertiary. That's nice.
Yeah. Do you want me to do body and finish as well?
Yeah, might as well. Finish up.
Okay. Body is medium.
Mm-hmm.
Even though with that high acid, there's a richness and kind of a full texture in the body. And the finish, I'm gonna say medium plus. It's kind of bordering medium plus, bordering long. I'm gonna stick with medium plus.
Medium plus.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Alyssa, are you feeling ready? You want to go next?
Yes.
Okay.
That I am.
I love the enthusiasm.
You guys, I missed last week, but like my parents were here and they really like to drink, so they brought like 4 bottles of wine. So I've been practicing. My dad's in a wine club, and so he just brings his bottles here. And I said, "You guys are going to be so impressed." They had no idea that I was doing this, so we had some fun.
Nice.
So to me, this feels, and this might be totally wrong, but I did like the tongue dip test with this. And I don't want to get the dryness mixed up with like the acidity or the alcohol, but to me it's like medium sweet. Am I totally off with thinking that?
No,
like, should this be dry?
There's probably some sweetness to it. Mm-hmm. It's calibrating that sweetness. So when you say medium dry, there's going to be quite a bit of sweetness in that initial palate, but finish dry.
Mm-hmm.
If you get a little bit of sweetness and finish dry, then you're going to go off dry. It's a tricky thing to calibrate, and you'll get better with more examples. But the fact that you're saying the last part is dry suggests that you're getting closer, because a lot of people with Alsatian varieties will automatically go to a sweet, even though it's not that sweet.
Yeah, like it doesn't, like, it finishes dry for sure, but it starts off like what feels to me quite sweet. Like it's like I'm drinking a Skittle, which is maybe a weird description, but
then go with medium dry. You'll be able to recalibrate that when you have more examples.
Okay, medium dry. Well, I watched the champagne session when you talked about, was it your tongue sweating for acidity?
Tongue sweat, yeah, we talked about that.
What's happening? I'd say it's like medium acidity.
Yeah.
I'm not really getting any tannins, of course. For body, I said medium plus. I was just drinking a Cab Sav not long ago, and I feel like it's quite similar, like in body to that. Not quite as heavy as a Cab Sav, but yeah, medium plus is what it felt like to me. What else am I missing? Just going on to some tasting notes.
Yes. Anything different from what you were experiencing on the nose?
There's just like a lot happening with this wine. I tasted earlier. I really like apricot dumplings in my Czechoslovakian family. So I got like some cooked apricot, which was different. I got more like jammy apricot on the nose. Again, I got some of that pink grapefruit. I keep saying like candy, but just like a really sweet, like red licorice, almost like Skittle vibe. And definitely some honey. And I'm really looking for like the toastiness of it. So I may be getting like a little bit of that, but I don't know if I'm just imagining it because I've been looking for it so hard. But honey, I'm definitely getting.
Yeah.
And it's very creamy. That's the other thing. It's nice and just like creamy.
Creamy texture.
Yeah, creamy texture.
What about your finish?
Okay, so this is how long the pleasant flavors last, hey?
Yeah.
So I would say it's like a medium minus finish.
Yeah. So that
Mhm.
all the kind of fruits and florals, all that kind of leaves quite quickly.
Maybe medium plus.
Medium plus.
I still don't know what a long finish tastes like, or like feels like. So I think I'm still calibrating that too.
In like a
So
minute or so, if you move some air around in your mouth and you still get maybe some of that lychee or some citrus, then that would contribute to the finish.
So in
one
that
of
case,
the
I would say that it's a long finish.
Mhm.
one of the tricks that I do for finish. Um, so you know how saliva forms in your mouth.
Mhm.
Just swallow that, and do you continue to get flavor? The more times you do that and you continue to get flavor is a good indication of where the length of the finish is. Because if you're if you're not actively taking in more of the residual in your mouth, you can't. It's hard to tell what that length is, um, and it's a it's just one of these tricks that you when you taste more, you understand that's how some wines the finish will just be there all the time, but there's tricks to for wines that don't show it right away, especially if they're lighter in body or lighter intensity, but the flavors can last actually quite a long time.
Yeah, like as you're talking, I'm like doing that exact test, and so when I'm breathing out and then in and tasting in my mouth, and I would say that it's a long finish. I'm still getting some of that sweet, like floral white blossom.
Okay.
And then
You're going to be able to impress your parents with incredible tasting notes.
they're like, what have you been doing? And they like nice wine too. So it's really handy for me. They don't know,
Well, it's good. You get to spend their money.
it's the best. It really is. Yeah.
So now, John, you got your sparkling.
Do you want to do Adam and Ajda first? Because
Oh,
they're
awesome.
they're looking very, very
Let's talk about
anticipatory.
Yeah.
We're dying.
Okay.
No. Well, I was gonna say parents are invited. We had Ajda's parents show up on one of the tastings a while ago, didn't we?
Oh, I
Although I
remember
don't know if they
that.
participated once.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. Long time
One
ago.
of my
Yeah.
first sessions, they were adorable.
Is it? If they're here on a Saturday, they'll add a little entertainment. That's for sure.
Yeah, we can go. So it's a dry wine. It's I don't know if I'm uncalibrated now on acidity, but we have it at high acidity. I mean, a lot of tongue sweat, right? But I feel like I've always called high acidity on any white wine, so I don't know.
Hashtag tongue sweat.
I looked at our notes from the 2016 Pinot Blanc, and we had it at a medium acidity. So, but anyway, high acidity, no tannins. I have the alcohol's medium. Body's pretty light, medium minus. Flavor intensity, medium, like the nose. Flavors are pretty similar to the nose. I think what we realized is more of a lemon zest on the finish. We were calling lime before on the nose, but still kind of the ripe apple, the pear, pineapple, flintiness. You got some green grape, which I didn't.
What was interesting though is that we've been keeping the bottle next to the window to get it a little cooler, and I'm now tasting a little bit of a honey.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, just a little
It's
bit.
warming up.
Nice.
I like that. Keeping it close to the window to chill it down.
Yeah, welcome to New York.
You know, I'm thinking our Saskatoon people should try this because it might be a little colder there.
Yeah.
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 What temperature it is? We're supposed to get a polar vortex.
I don't
It's
know
29.
Fahrenheit, but
So if it's 29 degrees, it is -1 in Celsius right now.
Oh, okay.
It was,
Oh, wow.
you could wear shorts in that weather.
What was it today? Like it was.
Today was with the wind chill was minus 41. I went to a sale downtown and it was called the wind chill sale. So it was 41% off, which is the only reason I know what the wind chill was. But, so it was 41. And that's been like that all week. It was minus 51 midweek.
Mm-hmm.
So
once again, why I am in California.
Mm-hmm.
we felt really tough here.
Yeah. Sorry, Adam, Ajda, I interrupted you guys. Are you done with your?
Yeah, I think that. The finish is medium, not very long. The flavors that linger are really kind of for me, the lemon zest just kind of stays around, but not all the other pleasant flavors we talked about. So medium finish.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Give us your Cremant.
All right.
So bad.
I'm going to come back to the sweetness.
Okay.
Medium plus acidity, medium alcohol, flavor intensity medium plus. On the palate, fresh strawberry, raspberry, some of that cranberry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to throw this out there just because it was something I recognized from growing up. Rhubarb pie.
Nice.
A
A little bitterness to it.
little bit, yeah. There's a little bit of a honey to it. That brioche is more. It's not quite there on the palate. I'm gonna go off dry.
Okay.
There's definitely some sweetness on the tip of my tongue, but with the acidity, it masks it pretty well. Body is medium. Finish, medium as well. The finish isn't that long.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I had a medium dry as well for our wines. And I only had medium acidity. I'm not sure what you had. Again, was it medium acidity roughly? Can't remember. I also had alcohol.
Yeah, that's what I had.
Yeah. And then I said the body was medium plus because it is quite heavy in my palate. Flavor intensity was medium plus, and it was all the same things on the palate. Maybe more lingering of tropical notes. That lychee, maybe some pineapple was lingering. Yeah, and then I had so a long length for this wine. All right. Oh, one thing I forgot to say too about the Alsace AOC is if they label it with a grape, it has to 100% be only that grape. As we get into other areas, a lot of the times they can label it with 85% of the grape, where Alsace is a little different. If they are putting the varietal on the bottle, it has to be 100% of that grape. All right.
Kendra,
Yep,
I'll be
sure.
right back, okay?
So traditional method Cremant. I thought we would just kind of do a little going through the viticulture side of things too. So because these grapes or this wine gets a lot of the flavor from the process of traditional method, the lees aging that happens inside the bottle. We don't need super great grapes with really high amounts of aromas. So they will be kind of those low elevation sites. They'll be fairly ripe kind of when they're picking them. They want more acidity left in the grapes. And another thing too is that they're not going to use the Gewürztraminer, the Riesling, or like the really aromatic ones because it just doesn't make sense. They're going to add more toasty notes to it, so it's just going to kind of mess with with those types of grapes. So they're mostly using Pinot Blanc. There's some Chardonnay, Pinot Gris, Pinot Noir, all those kind of champagne style of varietals. And the Cremant d'Alsace is the only appellation that allows a bit of Chardonnay, which makes sense too. So there are two other appellations to talk about really quickly, and that's the Cremant d'Alsace Rosé, where only Pinot Noir can be used, and that's John's wine here. And then they made up a new one called the Cremant d'Alsace Promotion 2012. I don't think it's been super popular, but there's just kind of one rule where 75% of the blend has to be from those three varietals, the Pinot Noir, Pinot Blanc, and Chardonnay. And this can be separately or together. But yeah, there's just they're trying to add another like quality level to things within their sparkling wine. I thought I'd also add a little bit about kind of the business here. Basically, a lot of the vineyards are very small holdings, maybe 3 hectares usually is the average amount. So cooperatives are really important in this area, where growers are selling their grapes to a cooperative that is in turn making all the wines and labeling them as such. And I think actually, I don't know, is Pierre Spar, is he a cooperative? Maybe not. I think is a merchant, but also acts as a negociant. So
So on the back label of the Cremant, it says Maison Pierre Spar, Successière, Négociant, au Château. So it is negociant. They buy grapes from a lot of people.
Yeah, and then make wines from there. There's also merchant houses or domains, and then there's some independent growers here as well. So the Wolfburger is a cooperative. We have the Domaine Arquil Furion, which is a merchant, and then the Dice Wolf, which is kind of a
Trimbach would be a merchant house and a grower.
Yeah. And then what was your Riesling?
The Riesling this is Charles Bauer, and it is one of the small independent growers.
That's Grand Cru. That makes sense.
And it's yummy.
So for still winemaking, traditionally, what they do is they ferment in these really old, kind of large oak barrels. And this is lined with like a thick tartrate deposit from the white wine making. Remember we were talking about wine diamonds in the bottom of some bottles. This is basically what's lining the inside of these large barrels. So there's not going to be a lot of oak influence on the wine at all, because of those tartrates, but also because a lot of volume to oak as well. But modern production, they are using stainless steel where they can use temperature control. They're not going to use that malolactic conversion. They're going to try and keep the natural floral notes. If you let that conversion happen, that creamy yogurt cheesiness, it's just going to really not mesh well with all of these really delicate aromas from these noble varieties. And then they bottle right away next spring, so they can release everything onto market quite early. And most wines are dry, where remember how we were kind of looking at Germany and Alsace a little bit, and a lot of the same grapes are grown in Germany too, but they have a whole different level of sweetness levels that they cover, where Alsace is typically fairly dry wines. So
just curious. So sorry, go with the bottle and then I'll jump in.
We kind of already spoke about it, but yeah, this long flute style German bottle, and then they have certain rules about how big the labels can be. So that's kind of why we all have very similar style labels from this area. Yeah, that's the end of my.
So one of the challenges in Alsace is that by the label itself, you cannot tell the sweetness of the wine. And because it is predominantly white grapes, you're looking at wines with high acidity. Now, until say within the last 5 years, high acidity wines were not necessarily in favor. And so the way that Alsace dealt with that is with a little bit of residual sugar in their wine. Um, but this makes it challenging for people like all of us who want to know whether or not the wine is dry. And if you're in your co-op or local wine store, if you look at the label, there's no way to find out. That's why some producers on the back label, and hopefully you can see that there,
Yeah,
they have an indication of the sweetness of the wine. And you can see here, this is clearly indicated as dry. Um, it is completely optional.
yeah.
And it is one of the challenges Alsace has right now because um, the global wine movement is to more dry wines, lower alcohol wines, but there's no way for them to indicate it on their front label. So take a look at your wines and see if they have that on the back, because um, some producers have uh, really embraced it. Others, they've just ignored it.
Yeah. Also, I have Grand Reserve on my wines. Also means nothing in this area. It's not an indication of anything, but
I
it's
was wondering that too. Mine says that too.
yeah,
Is it a marketing feature then? Is that what that is?
100%. Just a way of saying, "Ooh, it's grand and it's a reserve," If you haven't got a clue, so they're kind of playing off the ignorance of consumers with this one.
Just like every Kendall Jackson wine is a reserve wine,
Yeah.
which
Um,
is not physically possible.
yeah, it just really isn't. So should we
What
do
about
quality assessment?
before we do that on the Trimbach? Do they have a sweetness indicator?
Nope.
Oh,
Nope, nothing here.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting because Trimbach and Hugel are two of the biggest producers, and they can kind of set the standard for the rest of the wine region,
Hmm.
and they chose not to do it. Whereas
Do you think if it
Charles,
were a Riesling, they would? Maybe just because it's a Pinot Blanc, they didn't? Or what do you think?
it it would be that would be a producer brand level decision.
Okay.
And so if they're not doing it on the Pinot Blanc, then they're not doing it on any of their wines. Whereas you have a smaller producer like Charles Barr, who has fully embraced it. But then on our Thursday session, I had wine from Domaine Schlumberger, which is a bigger producer, and they have uh, embraced the sweetness indicators. So this is one of the challenges um, with the region in general is that they've kind of catered it to the people that know the region versus the people that they're trying to attract. The smaller producers realize, we've got to engage people more. The bigger producers are, in some ways, relying on their brand recognition.
I have it on another bottle. It says dry right here.
Yeah.
Right off dry sweet.
And you're basically, because the Germans have words that are used to describe sweetness, but the French don't, is what you're saying.
Yeah, we'll get into this when we get into Germany. It's those words are not actually an indication of the final product, and I describe it as being very un-German in a German way.
Yeah,
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, there's Germany is it's even confusing for me, and I've studied wine now for 8 years, and I it's yeah,
Yeah.
It's
I just kind of
inexactly exact, maybe.
Yeah.
yeah,
Almost flawed.
yeah. So yeah, quality.
Even in Alsace too, just going back to like that pyramid, they only have the Grand Cru and the AOC level. They don't have a Premier Cru or a middle ground, and that kind of hurts the area too because it's either you're getting kind of the worst level that you would think, even though it's not, or the highest one. so they kind of shoot themselves in the foot there, I think.
And in typical French governmental fashion, Najda, you know what I mean by this. Um, they have been for, I think it's 6 years now, evaluating
Mm-hmm.
the ability to introduce a premier cru level in Alsace.
Mm-hmm.
We'll probably know about it in about 4 years.
Yeah.
Yes, truly French fashion.
Yes.
Okay, quality assessment.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, maybe if you got 2 wines, so we can take this.
Okay. So the Riesling. Um, trying to not let my personal bias be influence my decision here. So I'm going to call this wine very good.
Okay.
So in terms of balance, the acidity is quite strong, but it is balanced off by the intensity of on the palate for the fruit flavors. The intensity on the nose was a little lighter than I was expecting. Rieslings tend to be um, a strong medium plus or pronounced on the nose. This was medium plus, almost maybe medium on, and so the intensity is not quite there um, on the nose that I would expect.
Hmm.
The length of the wine is long,
Mm-hmm.
and the complexity was interesting because the nose was complex, and so was the body, but in different ways.
Okay.
The nose showed a little more development, while um, the the palate of the wine was a little more fresh.
That's
And
nice.
yes, which gets into, and I'm just going to slide into the ability to age. I would suggest that this wine, if it wasn't opened already, has the ability to age and would definitely improve with more time in the bottle.
How would it improve?
The palate would start developing from those primary fresh flavors into more dried characteristics
Mm-hmm.
and get a little more of a honeyed character, but still remain that complexity and pronounced flavor, supported by the acid in the wine.
Spoken like a true diploma graduate.
Now I can say it with confidence and not questioning.
Yeah, exactly. Alyssa, you ready to go?
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is still an area I'm really practicing in. So I think I said this last time. I like hardly ever like to give something an outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get over that.
Yeah.
I know, but like this, I think that I would because there is, I think, really nice balance
Mm-hmm.
between like the alcohol acidity and the sweetness. It has a wonderful like long finish, like we discussed, which that's a first, I think, for me for actually really experiencing and understanding. The intensity is medium and good. And there's so many complex flavors and aromas. Like I opened this up and I was tasting it with Joel and I was like, wow, this is like really different from what we usually drink. And it's so good that I got so much out of this one. It was really fun to practice with this one. So yeah, I think I would give it an outstanding.
Cool.
Okay, so for bottle aging, like this is something I'm still learning about. So like just in going off of what John said, like there was still I think it could like it could develop into more of the dried flavors rather than like the fresh kind of young taste that it has. So I would say yes, it is suitable for aging, although I don't have a ton of evidence to like support why I feel that way aside from the flavors.
I would say because you're literally a month into this, don't worry so much about the aging. We'll coach you through that. But I think based on what you said, you've given good evidence. The idea of quality and ability to age is about being able to justify what you suggest,
Hmm.
and that as long as you can point to, there's something that's going to help the wine age, that you believe the fresh flavors will develop, um, you you can make an argument for aging.
Hmm.
And
Okay, that's
when
good
we
to
get
know.
when we get into red wines, you'll my description will be a lot more detailed, and you'll be able to pull from that.
Okay, cool. I'll give it an outstanding for the first time ever. But yeah, I really liked this one. This is awesome. And it's not something I would have ever picked off the shelf. So I'm really happy about it.
Awesome. All right, Adam and Aja.
Ajda?
Aw,
I can do it if you want.
do it.
All right. I mean, I would rate it a good.
Okay.
I think the intensity could be a little bit stronger, a little bit more aromatic. The length leaves a little bit to be desired. It's that kind of lemon zest I described is the only thing that lingers, but we lose all the nice kind of apple, pear, pineapple type flavors. And that kind of falls into, I gave it a 3 out of 4 for complexity. Really high acidity.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it could age. I mean, we have tried the 2016 and liked it a lot better than this 2018.
Yeah, I think the 2016 had a little bit more on the, what is it that it had? Like if you aged it, I think you would get a little bit more of the honey, a little bit more of like riper fruits. And so I think it could be aged another year or two,
Yeah.
probably.
What I love is that the two of you picked up a wine you've tasted before, and you still have your tasting note so that you can compare back.
Yeah.
That's his doing.
Yeah,
He's
but
very good.
but that's I geek out on this stuff because that it's part of what I've been studying for. But these are the little things that you can do that help to look back and be able to. This is about calibration. This is about helping to really think about assessment. And what you've identified is vintage variation.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, to get wine geekiness next level, you're doing it.
Yeah, we graduated to our.
I mean, it's still a little unfortunate because maybe you find a wine that you really, really like, and then you're like, oh, you come back to it later and it's different and it's changed.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
But that's why. Excuse me. That's part of why we wanted to do this is to help people, understand. You know, we talk about Trimbach as being one of the bigger producers in Alsace. That said, in the bigger wine world, they're not that big of a producer,
Right.
and so they're looking. Even though they're big for Alsace, every vintage is going to be slightly different versus somebody like Yellowtail, where they're definitely going to try and make sure that the wine every year is exactly the same.
Yeah.
I guess I have one more wine to do, right?
You.
Okay. The sparkling rosé. I'm going to call this good. It definitely has balance. There is a little bit of residual sugar. The acid bounces off that residual sugar. The flavors are in proportion to that intensity. Um, Length isn't quite there. As a sparkling wine, it is bright, it's refreshing, but the finish doesn't go on that long. Um, the intensity is there on the palate, not on the nose. This is always something that's kind of tricky with sparkling wine because the carbon dioxide can throw off the intensity. But once you get past that, it's medium intensity, so it's not overpowering. Oh, Ace, how you doing, buddy?
Like,
Um,
here.
he's like, yeah, no, I'm not having any of this. Uh, and then complexity, there are a couple different clusters, but it's mainly um, kind of that fruity note. There was a little bit of the secondary characteristics, but not a lot, which suggests it probably wasn't on lees very long.
Yeah.
It's a bright, refreshing glug glug wine. I'll bring it back.
Glug, glug, glug. Nice.
Last thing, not suitable for aging.
No.
Drink now, enjoy.
Yeah. And why? Why would you say that? Sorry.
Lack of intensity in the flavors and the aromas, not likely to develop. The acidity is there to keep it bright and fresh,
Yeah.
and that's it's the style and the purpose of winemaking that this was made for.
Mm-hmm. Well, so speaking of vintage variation, I wish we could try our 2017 and 2018 Gewürztraminer side by side because I think that would be really cool. But
Me too.
right, I found my wine outstanding as well. I said the alcohol, acidity, and sweetness is really balanced and therefore shows great structure. I said the length of flavors is persistent with delicateness still, showing a really nice floral beginnings, citrus tropical fruit mid palate, with pleasing notes of spice, showing depth and complexity to the wine. So I said the delicacy of the aromas and flavors is likely to fade over time. Therefore, I conclude that this wine should not be aged long term. But I think it could very well sit in a bottle for a few years. Just having a little bit of extra sugar will help preserve things as well. But yeah, just the long term aging, I said no to.
Yeah. So one of the piece of guidance that I was given in multiple different practice tasting is when you look at suitability for aging for white wines, it's will they improve over the next 2 to 3 years? With red wines over the next 5 to 8 years, and I can't remember sparklings because that was so long ago.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's been already in a bottle for going on 4 years, so and it's still showing super bright. So, and there's no signs of that being muted anytime soon. So, I think it could last a bit longer.
Yeah, you're right in that ballpark.
Mm-hmm. Well, would you get another bottle of Alsatian wine again?
Oh, hell yeah, I bought 4.
I know. Did you just have a Grand Cru like just sitting around your place?
No, I had the Grand Cru that we talked about on Thursday,
Yeah.
and then one of my local favorite wine stores is called K&L, and I went on and they have 2 of the Charles Bar. They had the Grand Cru all Riesling and a single vineyard Gewürztraminer,
Mm-hmm.
and both of them were under $25.
That's good.
And then the Cremant, I got the rosé, and I got the regular Cremant, and both of those were $15.
Oh, that's
So I
great.
got 4 bottles of wine for about $75.
Easy. Did your Riesling have a cork? Nice. Did you the 2018 have a cork too, Alyssa? Yeah.
Yes, it did. You bet.
And then what about your Pinot Blanc? No.
No, that's interesting because the
No, I
Trimbach,
did not.
Mm.
I don't hate on the Stelvin. I think it is such a great closure.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
I think kind of Alsatian wines are truly underappreciated outside of France.
Yeah. Yes.
Um, you can get fantastic examples of most things in, for reasonable price points. I think you can really, like I said, this Charles Bar, $25 for a wine that's going on 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
It's just you got to find the right store to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And in Canada, I know that's a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, like I think ours were roughly $32 a bottle per hour. So
On the higher,
it's
it was on the higher end.
definitely, definitely. Well, to get to the middle of nowhere, I guess it costs money.
Don't worry, Alyssa. At some point, we're going to figure out how to ship you wines, and
Yeah.
whether it's not, I have to drive them across the border because there's a
I
lot of unprotected border on that.
There's going to be a good news article about this.
Yeah, blue Tesla gets pulled over with 6 cases of wine. Yeah.
I've got perfect like cold storage in my basement. It's like a Saskatchewan wine cellar, so it would be perfect for storing
Awesome.
6 years. Yeah.
Well, that's it for today. For next week, if you haven't seen the updated syllabus agenda, we're going to actually try and cover 3 regions next week. Jura, Savoy, and Provence, because they have very focused kind of wines in those regions. But also there is some similarities between Jura and Savoy and Alsace, and then Provence kind of stands out a little bit on its own. Um, if you have the ability to get a couple bottles just to try the differences, it'd be a good idea. If you can only get one, that's fine as well. But look forward to talking to you guys again in a week. As always, questions, comments, concerns, just let Kendra and I know, and we'll take care of them as soon as we can. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good
All right,
night.
we'll see you next
night.
week.
Thanks.
Bye.
Enjoy your long
Bye.
weekend.